Wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Church on the Hill's podcast called On This Hill.
Yes.
And it's July, it's summer, and everybody's all over the place.
Yeah,
now.
people are enjoying the summer. It's good.
You should enjoy the summer
Yeah.
because summer in Oregon is pretty short.
I count. There's, I think, 8 or 9 weeks left.
Of
I
what?
don't know why.
8 or
I
9
count.
weeks of what?
Of summer.
Oh my gosh.
And then September is here.
Don't
So depressing.
Don't do that.
Don't listen to
count
me.
it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know why. I was looking at the calendar and then I'm like, oh my gosh, there's 9 weeks.
Yeah, around here in Oregon, it feels like summer starts on the 4th of July or something
Yeah.
like that. So it's you're going to be listening to this probably right after this
Yeah.
4th of July weekend. But hopefully you had a great time and you have all your fingers and you enjoyed some time off and
Yes,
celebration.
the fireworks, yeah.
Yeah, as a Brazilian, does 4th of July do anything for you?
You know that we have Brazilian Independence Day is on the 7th of September.
Okay.
So we celebrate not like Americans celebrate. You guys go beyond the celebration. But we grew up watching American movies, so we would watch the movie. Remember, there's 4th of July. I think it was Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah.
Is the war movie?
Yeah.
There was the movie, and there we would watch celebration and like don't understand why
Yeah.
in the movies they hot dogs and
You're right. Where'd
burgers.
that come from?
But my first 4th of July here, I went to visit, but friends invite us, and we want to be very culturally appropriate. So we bought T-shirts that has American flag. We had a hat. We had a flag. Our plates has when we show up. All the American people did not have anything. It was just the 4 Brazilians.
Yeah.
Dressing like 4th of July on the 80s, on the 70s, I think. It was fun. It was my first experience.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, there's a wide range of feelings towards
Yes.
that particular holiday.
Yeah.
But every country, I think, well, especially in the Western Hemisphere,
Yeah.
because of colonization.
Yeah.
I mean,
We'll celebrate one way or the other.
yeah,
yes.
it's funny to run into, like, say, Canadians or people from the UK in the United States on the 4th of July, and they're celebrating. And we're like, hey, you're
Yeah.
celebrating that you guys lost, basically. or something.
We celebrate, we kick you out.
Yeah. And Brazil was the same. You said
Portugal.
September 7th?
September 7th.
And so that was
is
Portugal.
Portugal, when Portugal left.
Left, yeah.
Yeah.
And they made a day of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mexico, September 16th, same thing. They celebrated their victory over their
victory.
independence,
Yeah.
freedom from Spain and
Yeah.
so forth. And it seems like every country's got
Something,
most
yeah.
countries, I should say, especially in the West, have some sort of day that they recognize freedom. It's a good
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Some people fought for that too, yeah.
Yeah. It was
So
a very
it did not
serious
come the freedom doesn't come free.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, even though
Yeah. What year was Brazil?
I think it was somewhere on the 1800s, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
forgot
funny.
that.
Hey, this morning or this evening or whenever day this is and time this is right now, we're doing this. We're going to look at an idea. You and I have been together on a couple podcasts recently talking about how we grow. And we talked about different things what is growth and why don't some people grow and or mature, however you want to use, whatever word you want to use. But today we're just going to talk about this idea of discipline. And what part does that play in our lives, in our maturity, in our journeys, in our stories, and how do we see it? And what happens if we embrace it, and what happens if we don't embrace it? So I want to just start off with this passage. It's out of Hebrews. It's a very familiar passage, but where the writer is saying to the church, he's saying, listen, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you or corrects you, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. So the writer right there makes this connection between the children and the father. Endure hardship as discipline because God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their fathers? If you're not disciplined, if you don't undergo discipline, then you're not true sons and daughters at all. So what do you think about that, where he's saying that there's this deep connection between authentic father-daughter relationship and the whole idea? And because you're a parent, I'm a parent, discipline was part of our lives, both as we grew up and then in the lives of our kids. How do you see that?
I see it this way. I think when we say this word discipline, there's the reality. You know, it's like there's the reality what discipline is, and we everybody agrees we have to have discipline. Oh, we have to discipline our kids. But then there's the experience where, you know, if you're raised by a healthy parents, discipline sounds very healthy, and then you're like, oh, I'm so thankful my dad woke us up every day on the same time. Or when we did something wrong, we were disciplined. And you see, like an adult, I will never forget a training we had and say, a children without discipline is an adult without self-control. And I'm like, that's interesting, because talk about anyone who have not self-control in their life. They have no discipline. An adult today who, let's say, even the married man who spend hours playing video game, you know, you trace back, then nobody has taught him discipline.
No one said no.
Yeah, no one said, like, too much of this. So now he's an adult, and nothing. He has no, what Pastor Jesus will always say, internal government.
Right.
You know, the word no doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And then you see in the Bible, God used this example of, I'm a father, and I would discipline you as like family. So it's a healthy, you know, it is something that if we, it's almost the gravity law. Discipline is something that is a law applicable, but we trying to avoid it because of the experience we have.
Yeah.
Let's say your father was a violent man, angry, then we trying to discipline our kids, or no discipline because we want to avoid this.
Yeah.
But it's still unhealthy as be angry.
Right.
You know, passive and angry.
Yeah.
Both are wrong.
So the rest of this passage says something interesting, kind of like what you were just saying. It says, our fathers, we should submit to the Father of spirits and live, because our earthly fathers disciplined us for a little while as they thought best. So that's kind of what you're describing. We had earthly fathers who had us for a season, and they did the best they could. But it says, but God, our Heavenly Father, disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in His holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but it's painful. He kind of puts discipline in a category, like true discipline is going to involve some measure of pain, and it's painful. It's not pleasant at the time, but later it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. So there's the negative of, I don't like pain. No one, I don't think anybody really wakes up saying, I just want to experience pain today, because we avoid pain. But he seems to be saying, but there's a health and there's a peace and a life out there on the other side of the discipline that we endure.
It is amazing, like this idea of, you know, it's painful because naturally I want what's comfortable. And you know, when you say no, when as a father, I was speaking to a group of junior high, and I joke with them. I say, hey, I'm going to tell you a word that growing up, I didn't like it. When my father and my mother tells me not to do something, and they say, I know better, because they have more experience, and they know, like, my dad has to discipline me as a kid because I start stealing. Every time I see money anywhere, it start in my home, and then not asking, just getting the money. And then in Brazil, you have family around, so I got money from an aunt that was next to me. I got from my grandmother that was close. So my father found out this, and we had a conversation, but I was disciplined as well. This is back probably in the 80s. It's Brazil is a different culture, but I got spanked by my dad, but then at the same time he wasn't angry. He wasn't like he did not lost his mind.
Yeah. Wasn't abusive.
He wasn't abused, but he was like, I have to discipline you. It's not good, but my dad was thinking about my future. Now I am 46 years old. I work. It's every money that is in my house is part of my income.
Yeah.
But if I see $1 in the counter, I still ask who is the money. It's like I still do what my dad taught me. But it's just this idea of, it requires my dad loving me, because this is what I tell my son every time I discipline while correcting a behavior. I tell him, if I did not love you, I will let you carry on.
Yeah.
Because I love you, I need to stop you for this. Because I'm not thinking just about now. I'm thinking about your relationships in the future.
Yeah.
So I think this is what this idea of where the Bible says the discipline now, it doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have a tendency to talk to my son, correcting him, and trying to play, hey, and then he's like, Dad, I'm not in the mood to laugh right now, because he is mourning or he's grieving of something he lost, a time of he could do something that he wants, but because the discipline. So that's where it's painful in the moment, but then it produces later. Like I'm thinking about, it was painful when my dad disciplined me, but today I'm not a man who's stealing money. My dad line of thought was, if I don't stop you now,
something else.
You're gonna go worse on that.
Yeah. And then I think you and I have been in ministry long enough to see that that's absolutely true. That this world is not a neutral universe, and sooner or later, there's going to be consequences for our actions, good and bad. And I think we see examples of that everywhere, where someone is in the back of a police car on their way to jail, and crying and broken, maybe not because of what they did, but because now the consequences have
of their choice
come to fall on them. So there's something that I say all the time, is what they would call a Bruceism, that if comfort is the governing value of my life, then discipleship just goes out the window. So in other words, if comfort is the thing that I make all my choices based on, I don't want to do that because that's uncomfortable. I want to do that because it's comfortable. Then I'll never be a disciple. So as you and I have worked with people, teams and team members and leaders, our own children, like you just said, I think we've seen this idea of discipleship involves some measure of confrontation. And now we realize there's a spectrum of confrontation that's ugly, that's abusive, that's awful, and doesn't produce any good fruit. But when you look at the life of Jesus, don't you see that in the shaping of his disciples and so forth over the course of those 3.5 years, there were times when he had difficult conversations with them, or that he confronted the way people thought, the way people spoke, in order to make them better?
Yeah, if you look at, I was, when I went to Mexico to teach in the YWAM, I made a timeline with them, because it was, remember the story where Jesus came to the disciples and said, follow me and I will make fishers of men. So I made it kind of the week, I made a time, kind of navigate from the first time Jesus met them to the last conversation when Jesus said, It's a start by Jesus finding the disciples and say, "Follow me." And then for 3.5 years, they follow Jesus. There was no perspective of you follow a rabbi and then you're learning to speak like them. That was the idea. But then towards the end, now Jesus says, now I want you to go and you make disciples and you teach them. And then in this 3.5 years, you see Jesus correcting their thoughts, correcting their values, correcting the desire of position and power. Remember, like the disciples come and say, "Jesus, I want to sit on your right."
Yeah.
Even John even asked his mom to
Send
go
my
in.
mom.
Send my mom. So you can see that they were struggling with, the power, the position. They're struggling with one another.
Yeah, the things that people struggle with.
It's amazing. Like Jesus lived the daily life with them, and then Jesus is probably looking and is like, yeah, if I don't corrected this, we're talking about today about Acts chapter 2. 11 men came in to pray. They suddenly the Holy Spirit came on them. Then they preach. 3,000 people get saved on that day. So the birth of the church is in chapter 2. Then Jesus probably, I'm sure he thought about, I'm going to leave this to these 11 guys. And I need to help them to see the things that they don't see well in their life. I need to teach them because they are in charge.
Yeah.
And I can't have them in charge if they're still struggling with power.
Right.
If they're still struggle with, like Peter. Imagine how hard it is for Peter to say, "Jesus, I'm willing to go with you to death."
Yeah.
And Jesus says, "You're not ready."
Yeah. In front of everybody.
In front of everybody.
Him.
And then Peter, it was already this idea, I may be the leader, I may the guy, the explosive guy, the one that Jesus say, "Behind me, Satan."
Yeah.
It hurts. But I remember a Proverbs, the wounds with love.
Faithful are the wounds of a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see Jesus, if Jesus could say, "Hey, Peter, thanks, man. I love you. You're ready." Jesus knew 3 days later or 4 days later, he denied Jesus.
He wasn't ready at all.
He wasn't ready. He was read late one. So you see Jesus, but I think for me in this timeline I did, there's a part where Jesus say, "Follow me" in the beginning. But there's a part that Jesus is stop and say, "If you want to follow me," now he gives this different speech. You have to deny yourself daily.
Yeah.
And pick up your cross and follow me.
Then follow me.
And that's where I'm like, I was teaching this, never had this thought. But if I don't do this daily, then I become entitled.
Yeah.
And then I believe God owns me something.
Yeah. God lives to do my
God
my
lives
bidding.
to do my life.
Yeah.
And this idea of like, if you talk about people in sport, it's like you see them playing the game, and then you're like, man, like I want to make $20 million just to play tennis.
Yeah.
But then we don't know what they have to go to bed early,
Yeah.
wake up
We don't
early,
see the behind the scenes.
the eating, so all this discipline. Then you get the result. So God knowing this, he's like, I would discipline the people I love.
Yeah.
It's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
There's no kid that says, "Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in timeout for 20 minutes. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the best part of my day."
Right.
But
But the writer, it's interesting because the writer says true discipline, God disciplines us for our good so that we can share in his character, his holiness.
Yeah.
So it seems like discipline. When you mentioned the whole idea of, say, pro athletes, and the word you used, the word entitlement. I think we've seen that a person could be born with a natural ability to kick a soccer ball or dunk a basketball or play tennis, and they have this incredible, way better than everybody else, natural ability. But if they don't have discipline, we've seen time after time where eventually their lack of discipline undermines any natural ability they might have. Either A, they don't stay at the level they could, or B, they crash and burn in some other private area of their lives. How many athletes, how many stories do we read about men and women who are amazing on a certain field, but behind the scenes, they're blowing up their lives with drugs or alcohol or crime or something like that, or they're kicked off.
Yeah.
They're kicked off the team. They're removed from the
Yeah.
team because of their lack of character. And my point in all this is that it's like what God is after is that we share in His character. And if we don't want that, I think we're going to avoid discipline because we're not going to see the value of it, right?
Yeah.
If we don't see the value of, gosh, I could have true godly character, then why would I embrace the pain? So the athlete sees this value of, hey, if I'm developed, if I'm trained, I'm going to have a life that's, I'm going to produce a harvest of righteousness, or in their case, I'm going to be a winner.
Yeah, I'm gonna win the things that I dream for.
Yeah,
You know,
the things that matter
the things
most
that
to me.
matter the most. So and we as we grow in Jesus, the idea of like, you know, being disciplined by God to the idea of I'm gonna look more like Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm going to, and then when I do this, the people around me are blessed. You know, a father who say, you know, I'm gonna follow Jesus, and then his kids are blessed by that. Or a mother who does this, or the kids. You know, so many times we heard stories of kids start being led by Jesus, and then the parents get saved because they see things. So it is, and it gets like. There is a price. I think we confuse the salvation is free. Being saved, it's free. We can't pay the price to be saved.
Yeah.
But then our walk with Jesus, we don't do things to be saved, but we do things. We do have to let go of things and the discipline is God like shaping us. You know, it's like when you're about to go on a trip with your kids, and your kids want to take the stuffed animal, and then you say, this can't fit here. You have to let this go, or you have to let something go.
You have to let it go.
And I think if we understand that it's the love of God who is saying, hey, I'm sorry, but I have to shape this one here. It's gonna hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, like when I was a kid, it has to get shot, an injection for, like, if I'm sick, and the doctor say, hey, pills is not going to help, injection would be the best. And I'm like, I'm scared to get a shot. And then my dad would say, hey, if we do this, in 3 days, you're going to be running again.
Yeah.
You're going to be out playing soccer with your friends. So then you endure that pain, you know, like showing like, and then you're able to do so. It's God is the same as God, where God has to, you know, resist it sometime us. Like, you know, that James say that God resists the pride.
Right.
You know, it's almost like if you think about God has, you know, when you're walking, someone put the hand in your chest and say you're not allowed to walk in here.
Yeah.
You can't come in.
Yeah.
And then, but then I don't know who was talking about this person saying, you know, this person humble himself. Oh, he's gonna suffer for a long time, and there's the people who needs to, the idea of like humble themselves. You know, it's a way of like accepting the discipline. You know, just say, God, you know what? Yes, help me grow in this thing.
Proverbs 19:3 says, a person's own foolishness ruins their way, leads to their ruin, yet their heart rages against the Lord. So there's this idea there that this writer in Proverbs is looking at human nature and saying, this person I'm watching makes bad decisions, resists discipline. doesn't listen, and yet they and those decisions create ruin in their lives, and yet they're angry at God all the time. I'm paraphrasing, but their heart rages against the Lord. As pastors, we're in, hopefully, the pastoring business, the discipleship business. That's the Great Commission, to make disciples. But you and I know that the church world is in the beginning is a voluntary world. In other words, people don't pay to come to church. We don't charge people to come to church, and we don't pay people to come to church. We invite people to join a community of fellow believers who are on a journey towards knowing God. I think if someone was to ask me, what are we doing? That's pretty much, encapsulate. We are inviting people to join a community. Now, again, people can visit and sit through a service or two or whatever, but we never want to leave them there. We want to invite them into the deeper and richer experience of growing up. That's Ephesians 1 and 2. Yeah. We want to help people grow up. But it seems like we see people that they want both. They want to be part of a community, or they want to have character, but they don't want to embrace any discomfort or pain. And so what I'm referring to specifically here is, say, for example, the confrontation or the discipline that is part of discipleship, where we say to an individual, you can't walk this way anymore, because the way you're walking is not going to get you where you want to go. You can't do these things and have Christian character. You can't do these things and still be part. So maybe to give you an example of what I'm talking about, you can't gossip, you can't backbite, you can't tear people down verbally, and remain a part of a healthy community, because sooner or later those two things are going to be in conflict, where they're going to crash into each other. So what we do is like that illustration of we're putting our hand and saying, you can't go this way anymore if you want to continue to grow.
Yeah, and it is like, it is the hard thing. For me, I don't have a problem. There's the confrontation of angry, and when I want to put you down, or I want to fight. But there's the confrontation where, like, man, I love you so much, I can't see you keep repeating the same thing. I have to come and speak truth in love, with the desire to, I'm gonna walk with you out of this. So I think that's where kind of like we should be doing it. This is how kind of the idea, but with this idea of imagine like we're like a car with the wheels not aligned. The moment we let go of the wheel, it's gonna go sideways.
Left or right, yeah.
And our nature, unfortunately, is, as we're still in the process of being restored to the image of God, we naturally tend to go sideways. It's like Paul say, what I want to do,
I don't do.
I don't do it.
Yeah.
So he's also talking about, I discipline myself to watch those things, to keep like my eyes straight there, because I can get distracted. Like we were talking about drift in our life group yesterday. And then we're talking about the if you navigate with your boat from here to Hawaii, it's almost like a straight line. But if every 3 hours or an hour,
just a fraction,
you go a fraction of degree, you end up in South Korea. Let's say, you go
missed Hawaii.
You missed your long ways. Then you're like, there's a long trip, but so. The discipline is this thing of like, hey, go back here to the line, go back to, and then we feel loved, because going back to the disciples, Jesus shows up and say, hey, you young guys, follow me. And then as Jesus is he's correcting their life slowly. When then Jesus tell them, when the 70 leave, remember that story?
Yeah.
They all leave, and Jesus tell the disciple, why you guys want to leave too? And then they say this. I think that's where for me, it's like, okay, now they're coming under Jesus' lordship.
Because they recognize something.
Because they recognize
where are we going to go?
where we go.
You alone have the words of
Yeah.
eternal life.
So them, it's almost like giving authority to say, God, correct me. You have the words of life.
Yeah.
So in this means words of life, He will have to speak into things that are not bringing life.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's the thing. If we embrace the discipline and the correction, knowing that thing that God is pointing, He's doing this because He loves me.
Yeah.
And He knows it's not producing life.
Yeah. But what about this? So what about the element of human agency? In other words, oh, well, if God pointed it out to me in a dream or in an angelic visitation, or He spoke to me and said, I want to correct this in your life for your good and all that. We go, oh, okay. But the problem is that He uses human beings who are imperfect. And so we react to that.
Yeah.
And we get mad at the human beings.
Yes.
We get mad at the fathers. We get mad at the mothers. We get mad at the leaders. We get mad at the pastors. We get mad at the bosses. Anybody who puts their finger on
personal,
something, we take it personal.
Yeah.
Who puts their finger. But what about God using human agency to help discipline us?
I think, I always watch this careful in my life, trying to see people. Some, in my experience, the majority of the time, God shows my behavior into a person, in the person's behavior, and I get annoyed with this, and then God's like,
You mean you see yourself?
I see myself
in other people.
Yeah, like you said, like the idea of something that God is speaking to you, and you have this blind spot. I can't see it.
Right.
And then suddenly you are relating to someone that the person is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And you get upset. And I was like, man, this guy, and then you like, and then you leave God a room to say, you're doing this too, or I'm showing, but it's, I think this is the idea of we have to humble ourselves.
Yeah.
It's like, is that why I think one of the greatest place to grow is in a marriage, because it's you have to be humble.
Yeah.
You have to you it's the person who loves you the most. Like I see Danielle, she's I know people love me, but nobody loves me as Danielle loves me. But also she say that to me when we have conversation. She say, the reason I'm pointing this to you because maybe nobody will have courage to say this to you. So I'm helping you.
Yeah.
And she's not being picky, but she's seeing something that I need to grow. And I think if we, and then I have to be humble to recognize, my first tendency is be defensive.
Yeah.
Oh, but and we have a joke at home. It's like, yeah, Adam also was defensive. You still have the nature of Adam.
Yeah.
Because it gets to this point. I don't know if I will have this answer, but I would love to ask God, what would be if Adam had say, we are sorry to eat the fruit? They haven't said that.
Yeah.
They just start
blaming and
he even blamed God and say, it was the woman you gave me.
Yeah.
It was like, God, it's your fault. It's like that's the Proverbs you read.
Yeah.
They made a decision, and then he blames God.
It's ruined our lives.
It's ruined our life because the woman you gave me.
Yeah.
It was almost he's saying, I was by myself here, was good, but it's like, we were thinking yesterday on our life group, that conversation with the snake, I don't think it happened in one time. I think it was a progress of like
Little by little.
little by little. Like the temptation is little by little. You go, it's like a wet paint. You just don't go. But man, as long as you stare to the sign of wet paint, it's a nature inside of us. It's like, check
Wanna
if it's
touch that
wet,
thing,
you know.
yeah.
But it's that was, you have to be around the community, and you have to build a community around you where you trust one another and say, if you see something wrong in me,
Yeah.
I need you to speak with me.
Yeah.
And then you be humble too. Is that why the Bible says to submit to one another?
Yeah.
It's like, imagine like the disciples, if they haven't done this. Peter stood up to speak, and someone will say, hey, Peter, a month ago you denied Jesus. Now why you think you are our leader? It's the human nature probably, this we speak. But there was something that unite them, that they like, we will submit to one another.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the idea of love, you think better from the other person. So it's being humble and being community. I think alone it's complicated.
It's complicated and it's dangerous. There's another proverb that I love in Proverbs 15:31. It says, "Whoever listens to life-giving correction will be at home among the wise." So there's this connection to listening to correction, which again is painful.
Yeah.
No one likes to have their faults pointed out. But in a marriage, that's a great example because that's where we're the closest. We see each other's faults the clearest. And so when they get pointed out, our natural reaction is to defend or deflect or
Yeah.
blame. But whoever listens to a life-giving correction, man, that's such a powerful concept that I can listen to correction, even though the agent, the person doing the correcting, I don't like them, or they have their own faults, or they're a male or a female, or I've been hurt before. Whoever listens to life-giving correction will be at home among the wise. So there's this connection between embracing discipline
Yeah.
and being a person of wisdom. And I think, again, I think that's kind of goes back to what you're saying about humility that says, I am not above correction. I'm not above having blind spots. And you know what I love is I love people who have been in the faith for 20, 30, 40 years, 4 or 5 decades, and they're still humble. They don't have an attitude of I know everything and I'm not going to make any more mistakes. They still have an attitude of I need to watch my life. I'm still, hey, tell me what this looks
Yeah.
like. Tell me what I look like. Hold the mirror up in front of me.
Yeah, it's amazing. As you're saying this, if any areas of our life that we saw a growth, we can say it came out of a painful moment,
Yeah.
that someone said something that not just like say something mean, but something with a wise counsel,
Right.
or a wise thing of that brought correction, and you embrace this correction, and then we grow, and then we look back, and let's say we are eating the fruit of this growth, and then we sometimes we even forget how painful it was. It's like a farmer when he's picking up the fruit. He sowed that seed under the sun.
Yeah.
He did all the hard work.
Right.
But when he's collecting the fruit, I don't think he is
He
like,
remembers the hard work
Yeah.
as much.
yeah, I was like,
Joy has
man,
come.
throwing the apple out because it's giving him too much work.
Yeah.
But he celebrates the fruit.
Yeah.
So I think that's the goal. It's like, man, I saw this man saying, I went through very painful moments in my life, and I would do it again because of what produces in my life, who I became out of those painful situations,
Yeah.
out of those correcting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It-
It was painful then, but I wouldn't trade
I
it
would
now.
not trade it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even a person who goes through a hard time, like, I going through painful situations where I would like be kind of like, oh God, where are you, and why this has happened to me? And when I change in the subject of why it's happened to me to God, thank you for being with me
Yeah.
on this matter. And then I'm like, look at back, I was like, man, I'm so thankful that, you know, we transitioned to one country to the other, that it was hard.
Right.
You
But
know,
afterwards,
but afterwards, it's
you have a
like, man,
platform.
I'm glad I did this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody listening would understand that I remember about 3 or 4, well, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, one of our speakers for our men's breakfast, Kevin Dye, his message, he said, "Men do hard things." He must have said that phrase 30 or 40 times, and it was intentional. Men do hard things. Men do hard things, and he was calling men up to embrace pain in order to produce fruit, in order to for their lives to be better and the lives of people around them. So I think that phrase would apply to us as believers and followers of Jesus. Hey, followers of Jesus do hard things.
Yeah.
We're not looking for the most comfortable way. We're not looking for the broad path.
Yeah.
We're looking for that path that leads to our growth
Yeah.
and leads to a life that produces fruit. Or he says in that Hebrews passage, a harvest of righteousness.
And it's not a man in the sense of like the gender,
Right.
But if you see the creation, God, like you say, man does hard thing. God, when He created and everything was good, when He created Adam, He gave Adam a task. Adam was not sit in the garden the whole day eating.
Yeah.
And
He was there to work.
and like sometimes the work, and then we see work as a labor, as a painful thing. We think as a result of the fall. You know, it's like, oh, because Adam and Eve.
Now I have to work.
Now I have to do
but
this
he was working
hard
from
thing.
the beginning.
It is like, it even like is in the healthy, it's a hard work. Even when Earth was healthy, Adam was labeling.
Yeah.
Adam was doing things. God gave him a task to name it, to take care of the garden.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, become harder because of that. Of course, it becomes harder because then it become our sinful nature mixed with that. You know, like I don't think like as a father, when I sacrifice to my kids, I don't think it's a result of a fall. It is a consequence of my calling as a father. What is hard is because of the sinful, I become selfish.
Right.
And then I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it's the battle is not against the sacrifice to my family. The battle is against, I don't want to sacrifice because I'm selfish.
Yeah.
Because do you understand?
Yeah.
There is a contamination of what was the natural.
Yeah. The way it was
The
intended.
way that the intention of, man, we would do hard things.
Yeah.
And now it's hard to do hard things because I'm having a nature that is against the nature of God.
Yeah.
You know, like it's against. So that's where discipline has to come. I think probably in the garden it was easier because the man was fully alive.
Right.
And then when he sinned, then is the Paul says the conflict of the flesh
Yeah.
and the spirit. And then that's hard, and that's where discipline comes, because then we see what Jesus said: if you want to follow me, you daily die. You know, you deny your flesh so you can be fully alive.
Yeah. All of us listening here, the one thing we all have in common is we all had fathers and mothers. Now, I realize there's a wide spectrum of how involved they were. But the other thing we all have in common is we have a heavenly Father who says, regardless of how you were parented, the quality of your parents, or maybe they were even absent, but he said, I will be a father, but I want to discipline you for your good and for your to share in my character. And our hope today is that that would inspire anybody listening to say, I want to trust. Maybe I struggle to trust my earthly parents. Maybe there was conflict, or maybe there was abuse, whatever. But they were imperfect. But my heavenly Father is a perfect parent who knows exactly what I need.
Yeah. And one more thing, that remember, we start by saying that discipline is depend of the experience we have.
Yeah.
And also, I always think about this. There's the I always make sure to my kids that I am correcting a behavior and I'm not rejecting them.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of fear of discipline because rejection was include that.
Yeah.
Like my dad or my mom would discipline me and he would not talk to me for the next 2 days. You know, there's the silence, there's a rejection.
Yeah.
And then when we think about God, like God would discipline me, there is already this fear of he's going to also reject me. You know, he's going to, God will look away from me. And instead of like, man, God is disciplined because he's coming close.
Yeah.
You know,
He's drawn to me. He's
yeah.
not repulsed by me.
But that's the thing, of even parents today fear to discipline the kids, and because they don't want the kids to feel reject, and then you see parents who becomes more friends of their kids.
Yeah.
I see an adult asking a toddler what he wants. Like, do you want to come inside of the church now, or do you want to still keep walking around?
Yeah.
Where you like, we say to our kids, we always say, look, we are not buddies. I'm not gonna be afraid.
Yeah. To draw the line.
Yeah. And I think, like, you read this scripture where God is gonna judge with fair.
Yeah.
And made like it's this thing. He's not gonna reject us.
Yeah.
He's gonna be fair to what he's talking about, not in us in the core. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, if God is for us, who can be against us?
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up. It's been great to have you with us again.
Thank you. Yeah.
Enjoy your summer.
Yes, I
We're
will.
going to squeeze all we can. You guys are getting ready to take a team back down to Mexico to build some homes.
July 18, we'll leave with 47 people.
47 people.
We're building 3 homes and do some ministry. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. We have another team that's out right now over near the Middle East, and they're laboring away with working with some ministers over there, some long-term missionaries. So yeah, we're excited. Lots of good stuff.
Yeah, God's
but again,
moving.
Summer's short, so squeeze all you can out of it.
Yeah, enjoy it.
Enjoy it. Recharge your batteries. So, so stick around or come visit us again. Let us know if we can help you with anything. Next couple of weeks, we're going to have some interesting guests come. We're going to have Craig Smith, who is the director of our Union Gospel Mission. Just came into that position just a short few weeks ago, and we'll have him here coming up. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a great one. And thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Yeah.
Have a good one.
It's my pleasure. Yeah.